Good evening. I call this December 4th meeting of the Paducah Planning and Zoning Commission to order, and I ask that you join us as we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to turn the meeting temporarily over to our counsel, Dan Key, who will be swearing in a member.
Okay. Mr. Morrison, if you'd stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, David Morrison,
Do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and be faithful and true
to
the Commonwealth of Kentucky,
the Commonwealth of Kentucky,
so long as I continue a citizen thereof,
as long as I continue a citizen thereof,
and I will faithfully execute,
to
to the best of my ability,
the best of my ability,
the office of Commissioner
the office of Commissioner,
according to law,
according to law,
and I do further solemnly swear
and I do further solemnly swear
that since the adoption of the present Constitution,
that since the adoption of the present Constitution,
I, being a citizen of this state,
I, being a citizen of this state,
have not fought a duel with deadly weapons
have not fought a duel with deadly weapons
within this state nor out of it,
within this state or without it,
nor have I sent or accepted a challenge
nor have I sent or accepted a challenge
to fight a duel with deadly weapons,
to fight a duel with deadly weapons,
nor have I acted as a second in carrying a challenge,
nor have I acted as a second
in carrying a
in
challenge,
carrying out a challenge,
nor assisted or aided any person
nor assisted or aided any person
thus offending, so help me God.
thus offended, so help me God.
Okay, I need you to sign this for us.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Welcome back.
Yes, welcome. Where's signature?
There.
I'll-
Mr. Summer, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Benberry, Mr. Bradford. Here. Mr. Morrison,
Here.
Ms. Schramke.
Here.
Mr. Shadle.
Here.
Mr. Wade,
Here.
Chair Casillas.
Here. Mr. Wade, you have the minutes motion?
Yes, I move the reading of the minutes for the November 20, 2017 meeting be waived, and that the minutes of said meeting, as prepared by the secretary, be approved as written.
Second.
Second by Schramke. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Wade,
Aye.
Mr. Bradford,
Aye.
Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Ms. Schramke,
Aye.
Mr. Shadle,
Aye.
Chair Casillas.
Aye. Ms. Schramke, you have the JLP Enterprises Incorporated waiver of subdivision.
I do. I move that this commission remove from the table the application of JPL Enterprises, Inc. for the proposed re-subdivision of property located at 3315 Pines Road and 3416 Minnick Avenue.
Second.
Second by Wade. This is an item of business that at our last meeting, we did not have a quorum for this particular item because one member had to recuse himself from voting. So we put it on the table to hold for this particular meeting. And so now we're voting to take it from the table so that we can once again discuss it. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Schramke,
Aye.
Mr. Shadle,
Aye.
Mr. Wade,
Aye.
Mr. Bradford,
Abstain.
Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Chair Casillas.
Aye. Ms. Schramke, you have the original motion.
I move that this commission receive and file the application of JPL Enterprises, Inc. for the proposed re-subdivision of property located at 3315 Pines Road and 3416 Minnick Avenue. I further move that the requested waiver of the public hearing and the dedication of streets be given and approval of the submitted plat be granted.
Second.
Second by Shadle.
There was one item that the engineering department requested, was that sewer easement across the property, and that's been made on the revised plats that you all have. Mr. Gardner's here to answer any questions y'all may have.
Went over this last time. I don't know if you want to hear it again or not, but I mean, I'll be happy to.
There are some members who weren't here, so that would
Okay.
be great if you could briefly.
Sure. This is a piece of property that is a remainder of a larger tract. It's along Pines Road, but it's also in between a private road, as you see Royal Circle, and then it's also to the south of where you have River Oaks subdivision and Old subdivision, and then the railroad tracks. It used to encompass an area on the other side of Royal Circle, which is an apartment complex over there. What brought this to the City Planning Commission is that this never had a clear title to it because the other piece was cut out as a development, leaving this piece. So when this was auctioned off a month or so ago, it left this remainder. They auctioned it off. It's ready to close. It just needs the Planning Commission's approval. You can see it's got a JSA sanitary sewer easement going all the way through the middle of it. It's also got we've shown the storm sewer, which the engineering department required us to show. That comes from the adjoining development, but it does cross this property, which is why we've shown it. But this piece of property needed a property line, as you see, Royal Circle. When they actually cut the other track out, they overlap the deeds, so we need to have a property line agreement anyway. So it was a remaining piece, but it needed to be cleared up to make that property line match what was already cut out.
One item that Mr. Wade just pointed out was that the motion that you read had the wrong name on it. It should be JLP Enterprises, not JPL Enterprises.
Correct.
So if that correction could be made, that would be wonderful.
Now, I don't know if it matters, but it was in the notes that way too, that percent, so.
Are there any comments, other comments, any other?
Do we need to correct the motion? Or
Yeah,
is
you
it?
should.
Okay.
Just go ahead.
So,
Who made the
so-
motion?
I did.
If you just correct your motion, John, you seconded. Second, correct the second, so it's.
Should I read the thing over using the
LP.
JLP?
Yeah, Jaylene Pitt.
I move that this commission receive and file the application of JLP Enterprises, Inc. for the proposed re-subdivision of property located at 3315 Pines Road and 3416 Minnick Avenue. I further move that the requested waiver of the public hearing and the dedication of streets be given and approval of the submitted plat be granted.
Second.
Second by Shadle. Are there any comments, any other input that you'd like to give? Call the roll, please.
Ms. Shramky?
Aye.
Mr. Shadle?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Bradford?
Abstain?
Mr. Morrison?
Aye.
Chair proceeds.
Aye. We're going to shift 2 items of business because there's one item of business that we don't think will take very long, and we want to be able to give time to the other item of business, which is the public hearing. So at this time, Mr. Morrison, would you read the Greenway Village?
Yes, ma'am. I move that this commission receive and file the application of Greenway Village LLC for the proposed re-subdivision of property located at 3470 Trailhead Drive. I further move that the requested waiver of the public hearing and the dedication of streets be given and approval of the submitted plat be granted.
Second.
Second by Shadle and Shramky. Thank you.
This is a simple waiver to establish one property line into 2 tracts. This is the Greenway Village multifamily development out off Stuart Nelson Park Road, which you all are familiar with. This plat will develop or establish the southern property line for Trail Loop when it makes that southern boundary. Mr. Goins is here to answer any further questions on it if you have any.
Are there any questions, comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Morrison?
Aye.
Ms. Shramky?
Aye.
Mr. Shadle?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Bradford?
Aye.
Chair proceeds.
Aye. Mr. Shadle, you have the Arcadia Street development. This is a public hearing for a zone change.
Yes, I do. I move that a resolution entitled, "A Resolution Constituting the Final Report of the Paducah Planning Commission on the Proposed Zoning Change from R2, Low and Medium Density Residential Zone, to B1, Convenience and Service Zone, for property located at 3101, 3106, 3107, 3113, 3119, 3123, 3124, 3125, 3132, 3133, 3138, 3139, 3142, 3144, 3145, 3200, 3201, 3204, 3210, 3213, 3216, 3220, 3223, 3227, and 3230 Kentucky Avenue, and 3101, 3107, 3113, 3117, 3121, 3125, 3201, 3207, and 3213 Clark Street, and 243, 245, 247 South 31st Street be adopted. I further move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Commission that case number 171204-1 pertaining to various addresses on Kentucky Avenue, Clark Street, and 31st Street be rezoned to B1 zoning classification. I further move that this commission find as fact that changes of the economic, physical, and social nature have been made in this area. Some of the major nearby developments are the new Paducah Middle School, Midtown Market redevelopment, new Independence Bank, and rehabilitation and adaptive reuse of the Coke plant. These new developments have generated new economic, physical, and social changes in Paducah's Midtown area. I further move that the above findings of fact be made in accordance with KRS 100-213B.
Second.
Second by Morrison. Thank you for reading all of that. This is a public hearing. We welcome anyone who would like to come and speak. We ask that you keep your comments brief, and to the point. And also, if someone else has made the same point that you were going to make, that you allow that to stand. However, we do want to hear anyone and everyone who wants to speak. If you would, anyone who would like to speak, would you please come to the podium, give us your name and your address, please. Would the developer like to come first to speak? Or someone else? That's fine.
My name's Amber Winkler, and I live at the 3142
Which
that you
number?
listed, 3142 that you listed. All right. So I'd like to express my concerns towards this, and hopefully this does not go through, because I understand the need for business zones and growth for the city, but the city to grow, we need homes and neighborhoods and families. That's who I've brought today. This is where we live and have lived for many years. This is where we know our neighbors, and our neighbors have become friends and family. This is where people raise families. We love our neighborhood and where we live. Please consider the families and neighborhood that already exist here before you vote. We like the quiet. We like the sprinkle of businesses with mostly residential. And we would like to keep it that way, being that there's two very important schools there. I think that the parents and the children growing in that school might appreciate it also. With all that torn down, you don't get that hometown feel So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Excuse me? I want to say something. Okay.
Do you want to say
Yeah.
something? Yes, of course.
I think it might be a good idea, Josh, if you explained in brief the difference of what it is currently zoned and what the proposal is that it will be zoned. What it currently allows, if there is a change, what it then will allow.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Shramky. What the petitioner is proposing for the lots in the back is to go from R2, which is low and medium density residential, to B1, convenience and service zone. What B1 actually is the lowest density commercial zone that we have in the city of Paducah. It does allow for retail, restaurant, office, bank, things like that. But there are certain setbacks that have to be met in this zone as opposed to a B3 zone where there's no setbacks at all. The B1 zone also allows all types of residential use from single family, two family, all the way up to apartments, along with commercial uses where there could potentially be a mixed use development in the future. The first phase of this proposed development is to have two buildings. Some of y'all may have seen that and some of y'all may have not. That's just going to affect one block as of right now. There's no homes past past Maple that's going to be affected on the other side of Kentucky. It's just right there on that first block behind Wheeler Wellness. But that's the uses, and Madam Chairman, if you'd like for me to go into a little bit of the staff report for findings, I can do that
That'd be
now if you'd like.
excellent.
Okay. What the future land use map shows is for the area to remain neighborhood commercial or neighborhood conservation. However, KRS 100.213B allows that to be rezoned if there's been changes of an economic, social, or physical nature. Being in Paducah's midtown with some of the items mentioned in the motion, the middle school, coke plant, Independence Bank, Paducah Running and Cycling Club, those types of developments, Midtown Market, those types of developments have really brought a new dynamic to Paducah's midtown. Based on that KRS, we have recommended approval to you all to send a favorable recommendation to the City Commission for the B1 zoning.
I think it would also be appropriate to mention that there have been email comments that have been sent in by Terry Lumberg and also Susie Renault. These have been provided to all of the commission members so that they have that input, and they're available for anyone to review if they would like to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I'm Jason Goins with SiteWorks. I'm the engineering firm that is representing the developer on this project. I just wanted to maybe follow up on a few things that Josh mentioned and go into a little more detail on what the proposed development is. What's pushing this, the developer owns the property along Lone Oak Road that's part of this rezone, or well, it's not being rezoned, it's presently commercial. There are some of those businesses that the developer would like to relocate into new buildings along that business zone that's in place currently. As part of that, on the development plan that you see, some of the properties that face along Kentucky Avenue that would be converted to parking. As we know, there's a shortage of parking in Midtown, and that will be used for that reason. That is the only area right now that the developer has any plans of doing anything initially. There is a much larger area that we're proposing for rezoning, but we wanted to do that now rather than save time and money for the developer down the road to come back to the commission and go through this process again. But the intent currently is just on that one block area to be developed as shown on the development plan. The remaining area that fronts along 31st Street and down south to the south end along Clark Street, there's no immediate intention of developing that as of now, but we wanted to include this all on one application and take care of it at one time.
But at some point, that could be developed as it would have, at that point, be changed
Correct.
to the different zoning. Okay.
Does a developer have a vision for what?
Well, in the future, if I did
I'm sorry.
in the future, if I did go on the other side of Kentucky Avenue and Clark Street, it would probably be residential. That new residential, not what's left there. And right now, like Susie Renaud, I met with her today at 1:30, and if Susie has to move, I met with her and showed her 3 houses on the other side of the street that she could move into because it will be zoned commercial then. So, and anybody that lives on one side of the street, as my houses come empty on the east side of Kentucky, I can move them in there. So and most of the lots that Mr. Shadle read already don't have houses on them. They're already empty lots. So it's not that many houses.
Excuse me, and your name is?
Alberta Davis.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I've met you before, yes.
Yes.
So you would continue to rent the houses that are
Yes.
currently there?
Yes, I would, absolutely.
The ones that, you would be demolishing the houses that would be on this
Behind
section?
Wheeler Medical, I would take those houses, I would raise those houses, yes.
And you would also be demolishing Wheeler Medical?
Yeah, they're
Okay,
getting
that's
a new
what I
building.
thought. That's
you
what I
know.
thought for the new
Their lease
building.
was up a year ago in January, and I promised them I would make them more parking, and I can't, I'm gonna lose them if I don't make more parking. So I've got to do that to keep my tenants.
Any other questions?
What was your name again? I'm sorry.
Alberta Davis.
Davis.
She's
Yeah.
the developer.
Yes.
Josh, as I understand from the zoning map that you've given us, this is almost like an island now. We're
Yes.
rezoning all the residential, or the R zonings within this, and that includes that one that's not in the crosshatch that
Right.
you and I spoke of, the Randall's property.
Yes, I do have a rezoning application for them that'll be coming to the Planning Commission on the 18th. So the whole neighborhood will be a cohesive unit at that point.
There is a house there. There is a house on that piece of land that he's referring to.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Will that go to the city commission at the same time?
It can, we can hold both and maybe do one resolution to make it easier for the city commission.
I would just hate for us to have a timing mismatch and
Yeah.
we end up with one property residential in the midst of all
Yeah.
that other. But the fact that we're redoing this whole thing seems logical to me.
Yes, sir. And a further point to add on that, Mr. Wade, is the B1 zone is along Lone Oak Road now that we're rezoning, or that's the petitioner's asking for, is already along Lone Oak Road now.
Are there other people who would like to speak tonight? Please come to the podium.
Wayne Walden. I live at 2937 Clark Street, which is right across the railroad, down from Paducah Middle. And I also work for Paducah Public Schools, but I'm not standing before you as a representative of the school district or its interests, just as a concerned neighbor, and this is the first planning commission meeting I've ever been to, so forgive my ignorance if I ask, if I say things that are uninformed. I would contest Ms. Davis' contention that there aren't many houses there. There are more than a dozen, maybe 15, 20. Just driving down it today, that was my observation. So I think it would be good to know exactly how many houses you're looking at there. Just generally speaking, I know that the city values housing stock, especially within the city limits. One of the things that we've had problems with as a city is residents moving out of our city limits, and some of that's related to there just not being housing available. Maybe the future developments will speak to that, however, but I hate to see us lose housing stock just because I think that it is a value to the city to have mixed development where you have residences right beside businesses and all of that's mixed together. That seems to be a positive good for the city. So I ask that you consider that as you make your decision. Also, we don't know, it doesn't sound like at this point exactly what future developments will be here. I personally would be concerned about the amount of traffic along Clark Street as it goes alongside the middle school, just because that's a primary drop-off for our buses and for our parents as they are bringing children in. So if there was substantial commercial development there with a lot of traffic, I think that would create issues that would be to the detriment of our middle school students. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. So anyone else who'd like to speak?
I think you brought a good point up about the traffic, and I think in future development, I believe, am I correct, Josh, that all would be factored in for anything that would be developed there?
There would have to be off-street parking provided for any type of new use that goes in there. The proposed phase one that's in front of you is actually over on parking in their calculations, which was using one office, one retail, and one restaurant, I believe. But things like stormwater, off-street parking, landscaping, all that would be considered for each new
I'm talking about
phase.
traffic also.
Yeah.
I mean, that would all be considered with whatever the future development would be.
It could be, yes. If there needs to be new access points or new speed limits or something like that, that's something that planning and engineering would have to talk about when we receive something.
Josh, I'd like to ask a question about something Mr. Wade touched on. He said that this is somewhat like an island of residential. I know that along Lone Oak Road, we've mentioned that the zoning currently is B1. Can you go through and just clarify what all the zoning around that area is as well?
Yes, sir. The north part of the area where the Star is and the men's store, that's B3, general business zone. That zone has no setbacks for any type of commercial use. On the west side along Lone Oak Road, it's B1, convenience and service zone, from Wheeler Wellness all the way down to Clark. The south side, where Paducah Middle School is, part of the site is zoned R2 and part is B3. The reason why that happened is because schools can go in any zone in the city of Paducah, including residential zones where they didn't have to change that zone. And to the east side is M1 light industrial. There's some industrial uses there, some office uses there currently. To touch on more of what the island of residential means is that there's no neighborhood directly connected to this particular neighborhood. It's all a commercial use or an office use or something other than residential around it.
Thank you.
In the
Yes, sir.
staff report, you mentioned the Paducah Middle School when they took in those homes on, I guess that'd be the south side.
Yes, sir.
This process did not have to happen, I believe, because that was going to be a school property. So
Yes.
those are still zoned residential, although they
yes,
are
sir.
consumed by the footprint of Paducah Middle.
That's correct.
Okay.
Do we know the number of homes impacted?
I believe it's 28.
Actual homes, not just
I
lots?
believe so. Some of those may be vacant, though.
At the present, it only affects 7 homes
Meaning there
that will be torn down to make parking for, be raised to make parking. It affects 7 homes.
but what we're,
Not the whole rezoning, but what I'm gonna do right now for is
Understand.
building
But in the
For
whole
Wheeler.
rezoning, there's 28, of which
Yes.
7 will be
Yeah, but only
affected.
7 will be affected.
Thank you.
The ones that you're going to be tearing down are from Maple going toward Paducah Plant, is that correct?
Correct.
7?
Correct.
Maple Street.
That's correct.
Mhm.
I do have another question for you. Thank you. Of those 7, how many are occupied? Renters or owners? I assume you're the owner of all of them.
6
but-
of them.
6. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, one thing that we could do also is ask for a continuance to let the developer and some of the concerns maybe work those out if this was to move on to another meeting. That's just something to keep in mind if that's an option that the commission has.
Of course. What would be the will of the commission?
I guess the question is, are there any questions that we have not had answers to? I mean, if so, then I understand the continuance. But other than that, I'm not sure why we would have a continuance. I don't know what's going to
agree.
change.
Exactly. I'd like to offer up to you if that is in fact something you want to do.
I have one question for clarification. There's a mobile home in there. Is that one of the 7, or I'm off a block there, aren't I?
No, you're off the block.
Okay.
Do Chris want to talk?
Oh, I'm sorry. Please come to the podium.
My name is Chris Black. My residence is at 3637 Forest Circle. And I'm not here tonight to contend with the entrepreneurial spirit of a developer in our community, but I do have concerns about the process. That for the planner to indicate that there's been a determination of a degradation of the nature of the neighborhood to such degree that the long-range land use plan will be ignored in a leap in zoning from R2 to B1. And for the group to knit and purl over which 6 or 7 homes are slated for a current parking lot to support a potential or proposed development is irrelevant to the overall request for the entire neighborhood's rezoning. And with not a requirement by planning for an overall comprehensive development plan to be submitted with a zoning request, I question the process that we're here tonight for a public hearing on a zoning change when in fact the long-range plan that the city amended most recently says to increase the rate of population growth. Residential development ensure a wide range of community character types that provide attractive residential opportunities for a full range of lifestyles and incomes. Upgrade the condition of deteriorating neighborhoods to improve the condition of housing and create a condition where residents invest in their homes and neighborhoods. When in fact, the concept of development is moved forward by the acquisition of residential properties, then to come before this body to say, well, now it's deteriorating and really it needs to be granted a zoning change. It's always cheaper to buy a residential property than it is to buy a commercial property that is properly zoned for the use that a developer is intending. To refer to this as an island, it has been a beautiful island for many, many years, as you heard one of the neighbors living in the housing attest. Now, again, how development takes place with a strip of B1 that exists along Lone Oak Road with everything from a home that's a commercial activity to a metal building that's been allowed to be built right at the intersection of Lone Oak Road. Improvement would be wonderful. It'd be dramatic and it's necessary. But for this group, I question, who makes the determination of deterioration? Is that a bureaucratic person within the municipality that makes that determination? Is it left to this august group? And please allow me to say how much I appreciate your service twice a month and coming and hearing and doing the work of moving our city forward by proper planning decisions is critical for our development. But so is maintaining neighborhoods that are worth living in. That the erosion of residential neighborhoods through the usurpation of property that's zoned residential to then ask for it to be zoned commercial, that's not fair. And who makes the determination would be one of the questions. When does the long-range land use plan take precedent over a request in the face of that neighborhood conservancy district being identified clearly? Not just most recently, but over a period of time. So if in fact the process were at the point the long-range land use plan is being amended, that a public hearing, which I realize they're asked for, but it is not a concept that the public is tuned into how critical the decisions are that are made. The people that objected on Pecan Drive most recently obviously weren't tuned in to the previous land use plan, converting the underlying intention of how the property that borders I-24 would be used. This neighborhood's property was not redesignated. To be afforded the protection of zoning is possibly the most important right a citizen of Paducah, a property owner, an occupant in the city of Paducah, they possess. And I recognize that you all are in the position of protecting those rights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Help me understand, where did the terminology deterioration, that finding, come from?
Yeah, Mr. Wade, I would like to address that because I never said anything about
I thought maybe I'd missed
the
something.
neighborhood
Chris. I didn't know.
deteriorating. That terminology is not in your staff reports. It's nothing I've ever said. What my terminology is based on is KRS 100.213B, which deals with the economic, social, and physical nature of the neighborhood. Doesn't say anything about degradation or
What does it
deterioration
say?
of the housing
I
stock.
apologize if I misquoted you, but you began the meeting indicating that the reason for bringing this forward to this body was, according to KRS 100, and what did you say?
KRS 100.213B. There have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area involved, which were not anticipated in the comprehensive plan and which has substantially altered the basic character of the area. It doesn't say anything about
Okay.
degraded housing stock, Mr.
But
Black.
the inference, basic character of the area, what would you infer from that? It's changed, I understand.
It is midtown.
I think that the inference was in the motion that mentioned the Coke plant, the Midtown Market, et cetera, those businesses that were so close to that. Am I correct? Is that what
Yes, that's correct.
we all thought? I mean, I
Oh, there's no
think
doubt.
that's-
And there are still vacant commercially developable properties available in the Midtown area. I mean, this body had to listen to 4 or 5 years ago, this same type of appeal by a group who ultimately, as they finished the hearing, which was an attempt to take R1 and R4 to an R4 conditional approved use, was that had someone in planning merely told us that this didn't line up with the long-range land use plan, we would have never put anybody through all this. And I'm questioning the process.
Well, and you did say, and I'm going to ask Dan this question, if I heard you correctly, you said who makes the decision? Who
Yes.
is the decision maker in this?
Yeah, but there's been a substantial change in the character of
You
the
make the
neighborhood.
decision because they recommend that you make the decision to send the recommendation on to the city commission.
Yes, I understand that. I just want to make sure everyone heard that's.
So it's a staff recommendation to you that you
Correct.
then consider and choose to move forward or not. But a staff
And then it goes to
recommendation is the
city.
beginning,
Then it goes to city commission, yeah.
correct?
Correct.
Mr. Black, I'd like to say first, thank you for your comments and being caring enough about this area to come here and be a part of the
It's
conversation.
not just this area. It's the edge of River Oaks next. It's what's
Absolutely.
across from Minnick Avenue next. It's everywhere that people live in neighborhoods that deserve to be preserved by this city of Paducah.
Sure. I guess the point I want to make is that I do agree that the terminology here is important, and to me, the word that stands out is change. The standard that we're faced with and the question we're being asked, as I understand it, is whether the area has changed in such a way that this zoning makes sense. And when asked that question, well, let me put it this way. When we get an application like this, the way I see it is that we have a property owner who's making a request of us that they want to make a different use of the property that they own, so they're asking for it to be changed. And when it comes to that decision, Kentucky law tells us to determine whether our existing plan says that that's how that property should be used, or if the area has changed so much recently, however you define recently, that it makes sense to make this change. So to me, that presents a pretty difficult challenge for us, because while we do recognize that there have been some major changes to this area that are somewhat undeniable with the development of the Coke plant, Independence Bank, and the school, just to point out those three, we also understand, or I understand, I don't want to speak for everybody else, that there are some significant interests for other people that live here. So I guess my question to you would be, if you were faced with that question of whether there's been major changes, how would you answer that?
Well, and I would ask this, that instead of that being a decision that perplexes you at this point, think of this. Had you been a property owner in that neighborhood, and during a process called a long-range land use plan, you came into a room and you, along with your neighbors, determined, this has changed enough, we really would like our properties to be rezoned B1, so that in the future, when there's a development opportunity, we'll be paid the commensurate value for our property that it's worth as a commercial development. Where is the fairness? At what point is my question in the process? At what point in the process does the decision involve a zoning change? And I contend that it's not here. It's in the review of the land use plan, which gives and affords neighborhoods the opportunity to say, no, it's tough, but we're sticking it out, or we're giving up. We're surrounded by commercial, and it's time for our property also to be zoned commercially, so that we can benefit from wherever it is we're going to have to go to find another place that's affordable to live, where you can walk to an elementary school and walk to a middle school and walk to a grocery. And I appreciate very much the position that you all are in, and understand that my passion is that our community is a great community, but a great community, beauty is not the privilege of the rich. That there's a responsibility for all of our citizens to be able to reside in neighborhoods that are safe, that are kept up, that are protected, and that are protected by our planning and zoning, as well as our fire and police and the rest of the city infrastructure that's here to take place. That it's important for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
One question I have is, how many in this area, distinct area that's on this plat, are privately owned dwellings? Two. And they would be, if you could point those out as you come in on 31st to get on Kentucky, or go on Kentucky, that first one on the left. These two right here?
Maple and Kentucky Avenue.
Maple and Kentucky, those,
The other one is
Okay, so that would be, okay. So that's one right there.
And are those homeowners here this evening?
There's nobody here?
But they're part of the action.
Pardon me?
They're a part of the request.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that what you're saying, is that Mr. Corleen, who owns the property in the corner of Kentucky and Maple, he's an applicant?
Yeah, and then the one at the far end,
Say that again, Mr. Bradford.
right here. Right
One of
here.
the residential
And then-
properties here that was pointed out is on the corner of Kentucky and
Right
Maple,
here.
owned by Joseph Wayne Corleen, and he is also an applicant joined in this.
And the other one's across the street, going out toward Broadway.
Right.
That, the big lot there.
Right.
Yeah, the triangle, the odd-shaped one.
They have made application, but we're not
This one?
deciding.
And they
that.
have made application,
Yes.
okay. So Corleen property is holding it R2. It would be interesting to see what he had to say.
Are there more questions, comments? Are there any more comments from the audience? Anyone else who would like to make a comment? What is the will of the commission? Are you ready to vote? Or do you have something else you'd like to propose?
Do we perhaps need to consider this, the last page of commission alternatives? Do we need to?
Yes, I know,
Okay,
that's what I'm
okay,
alluding to,
okay, okay,
actually.
Okay.
Would it be okay if Josh read one more time Mr. Summer read page 5 at the bottom?
The future land use map above shows the parcels to be neighborhood conservation. However, as described in KRS 100.213B, the zoning can be recommended to be changed based on major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature. Staff would like to point out some of the changes in the area that would support a zone change based on this statute.
That's all I had.
Okay.
When was that last future land use map created?
2007, I believe.
So we've had 10 years of changes to that neighborhood since that was first
Yes, sir.
envisioned.
Yes, but the land use plan was revised within the past 5 years.
The goals and objectives were readopted in the last 5
When
years.
the Pecan Drive zoning changed land on there, because it wasn't there in 2007, so the maps can change. The map has been revised more recently than 10 years ago.
It's been amended.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not only pecan, but there's been other zone changes that have occurred in the last 10 years as well across the city.
That makes sense. But has this been amended since 2007?
Not in this area, no.
What is the will of the commission?
One more question.
Sure.
Were there
absolutely.
any concerns at all beyond what we read in the report? Just want to verify.
Just the email that you got from
Yes.
Ms. Renault that Ms. Davis spoke to earlier.
Is Ms. Renault here?
No,
She was unable to
sent an
be here.
email.
Okay. So we have her email as,
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'll make sure.
What's the will of the commission? Are you ready for a vote? Would you like to get more information? Continue to a later hearing? What would you like to do?
How will this work with the other application that's come before that's related to this? Are we would wait until the city commission, or we would recommend that the city commission wait and consider both at the same time?
That's what we had discussed earlier as an option, yes.
Seems like it would be more complete that way.
So am I hearing that you'd like to continue the public hearing until we can receive the other application? Is that what I'm hearing, or? I'm looking for.
prepared to vote.
I am too.
But I would like for staff to let them advance to the commission at the same time, so we don't create
Yes, sir.
a fragment.
I'd be glad to do that.
That's what I'm
That's
asking.
assuming that both votes go the same way.
Yes,
Uh-huh. Which, that's a pretty big assumption.
yes.
So I'm more, with Mr. Bradford, that they both be presented after we voted on both.
So you're thinking
Because
about
I think we're assuming that we're going to vote.
that we deal with them both at the same time?
Yes,
So in other words, you're recommending that we postpone?
I do recommend we postpone and look at both of them at the same time.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
I move that this commission table this request until we have looked at, and I don't know which one it is or how to refer to it.
Randall.
Can I just add one comment on that? I'm all in, me, and I'm sure the developer is too, all in favor of going to the city commission together. The only reason that property was left out has to do with requirements on when public notices are put in the paper. We didn't have that one presented. That property owner was unable to sign at the time. We just missed the deadline. That's why we're having to do it separately. But voting tonight would be, I would like to, I hope that would happen. Next week, if we postpone, we're going to be going through, it's basically, we have no new evidence or no new information to provide at the next meeting. So if we vote tonight and vote on the other, we're fine with postponing 2 weeks or whenever that next city commission and bundling them together at that time. Personally, I think that would be a better option rather than, we're going to be going through the same information next week on this again.
The next one that's coming up on January 18th, that's a public hearing also?
December 18th.
I mean, December 18th. It's
2
public.
weeks.
It's a public hearing also.
It will be for the Randall parcel, yes.
But if we vote to table this to occur at the same time, I think we'll be giving people more chance to think about this and maybe have more comments, or I just think it's a big decision. I'd like to see the vote. How do the rest of you feel about that? Do you think it's important to vote at the same time, or do you think we could vote tonight and then assume the other one will go the same
Will it be
way?
2 separate items anyway? So you'd be voting on one and then turn around and voting on the other?
Yes.
It
It'd
was-
still be two separate items. Mhm.
I think regardless of how the vote goes tonight, if we were to have a vote approving or denying it, there could be a lot that happens in 2 weeks that changes the opinions of commissioners. So I think we would face the risk of maybe having 2 different votes, going one way one time and the other way the other time. And I don't
would
like
be very
that
bad.
risk, because this is just one little cutout, like you said, we need to have the same recommendation for both of them. So I think to eliminate that risk, we probably My opinion is we should continue it.
Okay, so I'm back to in the middle of my motion.
I was going to say, are you going to continue your motion?
And I requested that we table this motion to be in line with the motion that will come before us December 18th.
That would be a date certain for December the 18th?
And hopefully we'll gather even more information to make it.
So actually, we'll be continuing the public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Bradford? Okay. What we're voting on is to table the motion until December the 18th. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Shramky,
Aye.
Mr. Shadle,
Aye.
Mr. Wade,
Aye.
Mr. Bradford,
Aye.
Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Chair Casillas.
Aye. If there is no other business to come before the commission tonight, we stand adjourned.